It was the first Monday of the new school term. Students flooded into the corridor with their expensive bags, polished shoes, and loud voices. Phones were out, laughter bounced off the lockers, and familiar faces reunited. But at the back gate, away from the main entrance where the rest of the students arrived in SUVs, walked a boy no one recognized. His hoodie was faded and too big. His jeans were torn near the knees, and he wore shoes that looked like they'd been found in a trash pile. Some laces were missing. Others were tied together with wires. He kept his head low, avoided eye contact, and clutched a plastic bag that didn't look like it belonged to a student at all. He walked slowly toward the main hallway. Nobody noticed him at first, but when he stepped into the classroom, the whispers began. Who's that? Did he come to fix something? Is he lost? The teacher paused as the boy stood silently at the door. She cleared her throat. Can I help you? She asked politely. The boy hesitated, then handed her a crumpled form. She looked at it and blinked. You're the transfer student. Some students snickered. One boy in the back whispered loud enough for the others to hear. Transfer from where? The dumpster. The teacher frowned. Class, this is David. He'll be joining us from today. Please make him feel welcome. David didn't speak. He walked to the seat the teacher pointed at back corner, next to the window, and sat down without saying a word. His plastic bag made a crinkling noise as he placed it under the desk. The boy sitting next to him slid his chair a little farther away. During the lesson, David never raised his hand. He took notes quietly in a worn-out notebook. No brand, no lines, just blank pages filled with small, neat handwriting. At lunch, David didn't go to the cafeteria. He waited until the bell rang and the hallways emptied. Then he walked quietly to the back of the school where the garbage bins were. He sat on the steps behind the storage room and took out his plastic bag. Inside was a slice of dry bread and a small bottle of water. He ate slowly, savoring every bite, like it was a feast. What he didn't know was that a group of students had followed him. They watched from behind the wall, whispering, pointing, laughing. One of them took out a phone and started recording. Look at this, he whispered. He's eating like a squirrel. They all laughed and ran off, leaving David alone with his piece of bread. The video was uploaded to the school's group chat that night. It didn't take long to spread. By the next morning, everyone had seen it. David walking, alone. David eating behind the trash. David holding that ridiculous plastic bag. They gave him a nickname, Trash Boy. Some students giggled when he walked by. Others avoided him like he carried a disease. But David didn't react. He kept walking, kept sitting in his back seat, kept writing in his plain notebook. That day, in math class, the teacher decided to surprise everyone with a quiz. Just to see how much you remember. She smiled. Groans filled the room. Pages turned. Pens scratched. David stared at the paper quietly. 10 questions. Algebra. Geometry. One tricky logic problem at the end. He started writing when the bell rang. Most students dropped their papers with frustration. Some had left half blank. One boy muttered, "She didn't even teach us half this stuff yet." David walked up silently, placed his sheet on the pile, and left. That evening, the teacher sat in her office going through the papers. She sighed at the results. So many wrong answers. She paused when she reached David's paper. His name barely readable in small print at the top. But the answers were all correct. Even the logic problem, he'd solved it in a method she hadn't taught. She checked the answer key twice, then Googled the method. It was an advanced strategy used in college-level competitions. The next day, she called David after class. "Where did you learn that method?" she asked, eyes curious. David looked uncomfortable. He shrugged. "I just like numbers." She pressed gently. "Do you attend coaching classes?" He shook his head. "No, I just read books when I can find them." The teacher stared at him. "But that method, it's not something we've taught." David looked down. "I saw it once in a library book. I remembered it." She let him go, but couldn't stop thinking about it. That afternoon, she emailed the principal. "There's something unusual about the new student," she wrote. "I think he's hiding something brilliant." Meanwhile, things were getting worse for David outside class. The video had now reached a local meme page. The caption read, "When your school admits raccoons as students." It had over 2,000 views. David found out when someone showed him. During break, he looked at the screen, then handed the phone back silently. He didn't cry. He didn't complain. He just walked away. That evening, he didn't go straight to sleep in his corner behind the old bus near the lot. He pulled out his notebook. He started solving math problems from memory. Then he opened a small torn book, a secondhand SAT prep guide he'd found in a donation bin. He read until midnight. The cold wind howled through the broken windows, but he didn't stop. Somewhere deep inside, something was growing. A fire. The next week, the school announced a team challenge for the inter-school math competition. Students were to form groups. The best team would represent the school. David didn't try to join anyone. No one asked him either. But during the group trial, he raised his hand. The room fell silent. "Can I try?" he asked. The teacher looked unsure, but she nodded. David solved the problem on the board in less than 60 seconds. There was complete silence. Then one student snorted. He just memorized that. But the teacher asked him to solve a different one. Harder, longer. David did it again. The room wasn't laughing anymore. By the end of the session, the teacher placed his name on the top 5 list. The next day, his name was removed. Whispers said the principal didn't want the school represented like that. David said nothing. He kept coming to school, kept writing, kept learning. But one girl, Maya, had noticed everything. She'd seen the lunch, the silence, the cold stares, the unfair removal. And one afternoon, after school, she walked up to him while he was erasing math problems from the whiteboard after class. "Why don't you fight back?" she asked. David looked at her. His voice was quiet. "Because I can't afford to lose what little I have." She stared at him. "What do you mean?" David walked away. That night, Maya followed him from a distance. She saw where he went. Not a house, not an apartment, but the back of an old city bus behind the school grounds. She watched him open the door, crawl inside, and disappear into the darkness. The next morning, she came to school without sleeping. Her mind was racing. Who was this boy? Why was he here? How could someone so smart be living like that? She needed answers, and she wasn't going to stop until she found them. The next day began with the usual noise in the school corridor. Students were sharing jokes, watching TikToks, bragging about their expensive weekend plans. But Maya wasn't smiling. She sat quietly at her desk, staring at the back of the class. Where David usually sat, he hadn't arrived yet. For some reason, she felt nervous. The night before kept replaying in her mind how he climbed into the abandoned bus, how the windows were cracked, how his breath had fogged up the cold glass. It wasn't a place for a boy to live. It wasn't a place for anyone to live. 20 minutes later, David walked in. His eyes looked a little swollen. Maybe he hadn't slept. Maybe the cold had made him sick. He sat at his desk and opened his notebook like always. But this time, Maya didn't stay silent. She slid a small thermos across the table toward him. "It's warm tea," she said softly. "My mom made it." David stared at it, then looked at her. "Why?" he asked. Maya shrugged. "Because you look like you needed it." David didn't say thank you. He didn't say anything, but he took it. The class stared. Whispers started again. "Why is she talking to the trash boy?" one girl asked. "Maybe she feels sorry for him," someone replied. "Or maybe she thinks she can save him." David ignored them, but Maya didn't. At lunch, she sat beside him on the steps near the back, holding 2 sandwiches. "You'll get sick if you keep eating dry bread," she said, handing him one. David hesitated. "I don't like pity." Maya frowned. "Then don't take it as pity, take it as trade. You give me your math notes, I give you food." For the first time, David gave a tiny smile. "Deal." They ate in silence. But that silence didn't stay secret for long. A boy named same one who'd filmed David the first time, saw them together. He took more photos. This time, with Maya in the frame. He posted them online. Beauty and the Beast. School edition. Hundreds of reactions. Some laughed. Some said Maya had lost her mind. Others said maybe she was trying to go viral. Maya saw the post that evening. She didn't cry. She didn't hide. She simply wrote a comment under it. "The only beast here is the person holding the camera." The next morning, things got tense. Carter walked into school fuming. "You think you're a hero now?" he asked Maya in the hallway, posting replies like some social warrior. Maya didn't blink. "Maybe I just have eyes," she said. "And maybe I know kindness when I see it." Carter shoved a locker door closed. "You'll regret this," he muttered and walked off. David had seen everything. Later, he told her, "You didn't need to do that." She looked at him. "You didn't need to help that cat last week, but you did." David looked surprised. "You saw that?" She nodded. "I see a lot more than people think." In the following days, Maya began to dig deeper. She asked around, checked school records, tried to find out where David had come from. The records were thin. Transfer student from temporary guardian with no phone number, previous school unknown, no listed home address. It was like he didn't exist before the semester. She even checked with the janitor, Mr. Ellis, who always seemed to notice, more than others. "That boy," Mr. Ellis said, "has seen things most grown men haven't. Don't push too hard. Girl, some stories are painful." But Maya couldn't stop. She needed to know. That one evening, she went back to that broken bus. She knocked gently. "David," there was silence. Then the door creaked open. He stood inside, hoodie on, eyes cautious. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Because I want to understand," Maya said. "You don't have to hide, not from me." David sighed. "There's nothing to understand. My parents left when I was 9. My aunt took me in for a while, but she got sick. I've been on my own since 13, moved place to place. Then I found this school." Maya's heart sank. "You've been alone that long?" David nodded. "People only care when it's too late." Inside the bus, there were blankets, a stack of old books, some instant noodles, a broken heater, and a few candles. On the wall, someone had scribbled formulas in black marker. Equations, charts, notes. "You study here?" she asked. "Where else?" he replied. "The library kicks me out by 6. She looked around, overwhelmed by the cold, the loneliness, the raw truth. "How do you survive?" she whispered. David looked her in the eye. "I solve problems. I stay quiet. I keep moving. That's survival." Back at school, another announcement was made. The regional science challenge was coming up. Students were encouraged to apply with original projects. Carter's group had already started designing a drone. Maya turned to David. You should enter. He shook his head. They won't let me. Maya narrowed her eyes. Then we'll do it differently. They started working in secret. David had an idea, small machine that could generate clean water from air moisture, using scrap metal, solar charge, and a system he'd once seen in an old documentary. He designed it from memory. Maya helped collect parts. Mr. Ellis, the janitor, noticed and said nothing, but one night, he left a toolkit on the bench with a sticky note. Tools don't judge. Use them well. David smiled for real that time. For days, they built, soldered, tested, and failed, then tried again, and again, until it worked. Not perfectly, but enough. The machine hummed, collected mist, and poured drops into a bottle. Maya recorded a video. This is David, she said, the boy your school laughed at, the boy who sleeps in a bus, the boy who just created drinkable water using trash. They didn't post it yet, they weren't ready, but they saved it. One morning, David came to school and found a note on his locker. It was in an envelope, no name. Inside was a printed email. It said, your application for the science fair has been rejected. Unregistered guardian, no valid address. No ID. David stood there, frozen. Maya saw him. She read the paper. This is wrong, she said. This is sabotage. David didn't say a word. He walked out of the school quietly and didn't come back for 3 days. Maya searched for him, called Mr. Ellis, checked the bus. Empty, cold. Rain poured that week. She sat inside the bus and waited. On the 3rd night, David returned. Wet, shivering, quiet. Where were you? She cried. You can't disappear like that. He looked at her, eyes hollow. What's the point? They'll never let someone like me win. They don't want me here. She walked up, grabbed his arm. You don't need their permission to exist. You already did the impossible. You just have to show them. That night, they uploaded the video. Within hours, it exploded. Views poured in. Comments came from all over. This kid is a genius. Why hasn't someone helped him yet? He's what our education system is missing. News outlets picked it up. Influencers shared it. Celebrities retweeted it. Within 48 hours, #Waterboy trended. The school was silent the next morning. David walked in with Maya by his side. No one laughed. No one whispered. Carter didn't speak. Even the principal looked uncomfortable. A representative from a national science organization was waiting in the office. We saw the video, he said. We'd like to talk to David. The principal tried to take credit. Our school supports young innovators. The man raised an eyebrow. Then why was he rejected? That night, Maya looked at David as they sat under the stars near the bus. Are you ready for what's coming? She asked. David looked out into the night. No, he said honestly, but I'm not hiding anymore. She smiled. Good, because they're going to see you now. The wind was cold, but David wasn't. He was on fire. The sun hadn't fully risen yet, but David was already awake. He hadn't slept much. After the video had gone viral, things were changing faster than he could understand. Messages kept pouring in, some from journalists, others from strangers, offering help, some even from universities asking about his science project. But in the middle of all that noise, David felt quiet. A strange quiet, like the silence before a storm. He sat inside the cold bus, surrounded by candles and books, staring at the email on Maya's cracked tablet. We would like to invite David to present his project at the National Young Inventors Forum. The logo at the bottom was real. So were the names, so was the offer. But the words felt like they belonged to someone else. Someone cleaner, warmer, better dressed. At school, the energy had shifted. Students who used to laugh now whispered when he walked by. Some avoided eye contact. Others stared like they didn't know whether to clap or hide. Carter was silent. He hadn't spoken a word since the video exploded online. Even the teachers treated David differently. Some were polite, others seemed nervous. The principal forced a smile when he saw him in the hallway, like he was trying to act like nothing had happened. But Maya knew something wasn't right. At lunch, they sat under the old tree near the back field. David took small bites of the sandwich she'd brought him. Maya pulled out a sheet of paper. The forum is next week. It's in Chicago. You'll need to prepare a demo and a speech. David blinked. Chicago. But how will I get there? Maya smiled. That's the thing. A sponsor has offered to pay for your trip, flights, hotel, everything. You just need a guardian to sign. David's smile faded. I don't have one. Maya looked at him. We'll figure it out. Later that day, Maya went to Mr. Ellis, the janitor. She found him repairing a sink near the gym. Mr. Ellis, she said, can someone like you sign as a guardian temporarily? The old man raised an eyebrow. That depends. Why? Maya told him everything. The forum, the trip, the opportunity, the only missing piece, a guardian, to represent David legally. Mr. Ellis didn't answer right away. He wiped his hands, stood up straight, and looked out the window. You know, he said slowly, that boy reminds me of someone I used to know. Someone who was also thrown away when he had something special. Maya looked at him curiously. What happened to that person? Mr. Ellis turned. He never got a second chance. Maybe now I can help someone else get his. The next morning, Mr. Ellis walked into the principal's office and placed a folder on the table. I'm applying as temporary guardian for David, he said. The principal blinked. You're a janitor, Mr. Ellis smiled. And you're a coward. There was silence. Then he added, I may clean floors, but I still have a license, a clean record, and 30 years of community service. That's more than I can say for some people here. The principal frowned. You'll need to get district approval. Mr. Ellis nodded. Already sent the forms. That evening, the approval came through. David would be allowed to travel. Maya was thrilled. She helped him pack mostly books, wires, batteries, and a few clothes donated by a local charity after seeing the viral video. They gave him a new jacket too. It still had the price tag. David stared at it. I've never worn something new before, he whispered. Maya gently removed the tag and said, Now you have. The flight to Chicago was David's first time. On a plane, he looked out the window with wide eyes, barely blinking. Mr. Ellis sat beside him, calm and quiet. Maya stayed behind but texted him the whole time. Tell me everything, she wrote. Even the snacks they give you. David smiled for real. At the hotel, he was given his own room, a real bed, a warm shower, fluffy towels. It felt like a dream. He stood under the water for 30 minutes, just letting the warmth melt the cold from his bones. The next morning, the forum began. There were dozens of young inventors from across the country. All of them had lab coats, posters, polished presentations. David walked in with a simple box and a notebook. Some kids stared. Others whispered. One girl asked, What's your project? David said quietly, I make water from air. She laughed. You mean like magic? David didn't reply. He simply set up his device, connected the solar panel, and waited. Within minutes, the machine buzzed softly. The glass jar beneath it began to fill with droplets. Judges walked by and stopped. One of them leaned closer and asked, What's your power source? David replied, Sunlight and hope. More and more people gathered around. Cameras clicked. Notes were taken. The judges looked impressed. One leaned toward another and whispered, We've never seen this design before. Where did he learn it? Another judge asked. Do you have a patent? David shook his head. I don't even have a home. Silence followed. Then one judge nodded slowly. That may be the most honest answer we've ever heard. When it was time for the speeches, David stood nervously on the stage. The lights were bright. The crowd was huge. But he remembered what Maya told him before the flight. Don't try to impress them. Just tell your truth. He stepped up to the microphone. His voice trembled at first. My name is David. I don't have parents. I don't have a house. I don't have clean clothes. But I have ideas. And I believe ideas should not belong only to people with money. The room was silent. He continued. I built something out of trash that could help people. Not just here, but in places where kids drink from dirty puddles. I'm not the smartest person here, but I know what thirst feels like and I wanted to fix it. He paused, then looked up. Some people laughed at me. Others tried to erase me, but I'm still here, and I'm not hiding anymore. The crowd erupted in applause. Judges stood, people clapped. One reporter wiped a tear. Mr. Ellis clapped too, his eyes shining. Later, that night, Maya video called him. David smiled through the screen. I think I just lived someone else's life today, he said. Maya laughed. No, you finally lived your own. But back at school, not everyone was happy. Carter watched the live stream. His face was hard, his fist clenched. He turned off his phone and muttered, That should have been me. The next day, someone broke into the back of the school lab. David's invention was missing. The teacher found the glass jar shattered, wires scattered, solar panel smashed. The principal launched an investigation. Security footage showed a figure in a hoodie, face hidden, but Maya knew who it was. She stormed up to Carter in the hallway. You did it, didn't you? She shouted. Carter smirked. Prove it. Maya's fists tightened. You're just scared, because even with everything you had, you could never be him. David returned 2 days later. The lab was locked. The project destroyed. He stared at the broken pieces, but instead of crying, he picked up a wire. I can build it again, he said. Better this time, and that's exactly what he did. David didn't speak much the day he returned to school. He kept his eyes down and his backpack close. The moment he entered the classroom, the silence was sharp. Everyone knew what had happened. Everyone had seen the news, how his invention had shocked the judges, how the crowd had stood and clapped, how he became a headline overnight. But they also knew the project had been destroyed days later, not by accident, on purpose. The footage wasn't clear enough to punish anyone officially, but Maya knew, and David knew too. Yet neither of them pointed fingers. Not yet, David quietly went to the lab during break. The door was still locked, but the janitor had left it slightly open for him. Inside, the air smelled of burnt wires and broken plastic, but David didn't flinch. He knelt beside the wreckage, picked up a wire, and ran it through his fingers. His eyes scanned the damage. It's not beyond repair, he whispered to himself. Maya stood at the door watching. You shouldn't have to fix what someone else broke, she said softly. David looked at her. I don't care who broke it. I only care that it works again. They began working in secret again. This time, Mr. Ellis offered them space inside the old boiler room near the gym, quiet, hidden, dusty, and perfect. They cleaned it out together. Maya brought gloves, David brought tools, and piece by piece, they started rebuilding the machine. But this time, David improved the design. He simplified the circuitry, added a moisture sensor, and programmed it to shut off automatically when full. "What made you think of that?" Maya asked. "Thirst," David replied. "You learn to measure every drop when you don't know where the next one will come from." Meanwhile, whispers started spreading again. Only this time, they weren't cruel, they were curious. Students who once laughed now asked questions. "Is he really going to rebuild it? I heard it was better than before. Did you know? He sleeps in a bus." Carter watched from a distance. He hated it, the attention, the sympathy, the way people slowly began admiring someone he once humiliated. He felt his control slipping, and it burned. One afternoon, while David worked in the boiler room, the principal walked in unannounced. He looked around, raised an eyebrow at the tools, and crossed his arms. "This room isn't a sanctioned workspace," he said. "You're not allowed to be in here." David stood up. "I'm just rebuilding the project." The principal nodded slowly. "You already got your spotlight. I suggest you focus on your classes now." David remained calm. This is science class too." The principal didn't respond. He simply turned and left. But Maya could tell he wasn't done. That evening, David received an email. It was from a science nonprofit based in New York. They had seen the forum video and were inviting him to apply for their prestigious scholarship. Full tuition, housing, mentorship, it was more than he ever dreamed of. David stared at the screen for a long time. "This is real," he whispered. Maya smiled. "Yes, it is. And you deserve it." But something strange happened the next day. David was called to the counselor's office. When he arrived, the counselor looked uncomfortable. "David," she said carefully, "we've received concerns about your residency status. The district wants to confirm your guardian documentation." David's chest tightened. "You already approved, Mr. Ellis," he replied. She nodded. "Yes, but now it's being reviewed. Someone reported that you're staying in an unsafe environment." David felt the air leave his lungs. He knew what this was. Someone wanted to block his chances again. "Are they trying to disqualify me?" he asked. The counselor looked away. "We're just following protocol." David returned to class silent. Maya saw his face and knew instantly something was wrong. He handed her the notice. She read it and clenched her fists. "They're scared of what you'll become," she said. "That's why they're trying to erase you again." David nodded. "But this time, I'm not staying quiet." That night, they did something bold. Maya helped David film a second video. This time, not about the invention, but about the system. David sat in front of the camera and spoke clearly. "I've been homeless since I was 13. I've studied from library books, lived in an abandoned bus, and survived off donated food. I created a machine to help others like me. And now, instead of support, I'm being investigated. Not for doing something wrong, but for not being rich." The video went up the next morning. It didn't just go viral, it exploded. News anchors replayed his speech. Commentators debated it. Activists demanded answers. The school district started receiving thousands of emails. A well-known celebrity even tweeted, "If this kid doesn't get a scholarship, the system is broken." At school, the tension was thick. Students looked at David differently now. Some came up and offered quiet support, others just nodded respectfully. Carter, however, was fuming. He cornered David by the water fountain. "What's your endgame, huh? Pity points? A Netflix deal?" David stared at him calmly. "I'm just trying to make water. You're the one making noise." Carter shoved him. Maya stepped in fast. "Touch him again, and I'll show this to the board," she said, holding up her phone. "Already recording." Carter backed off. Days passed. David's scholarship approval still hung in limbo. The district was reviewing documents, a phrase Maya came to hate, but the public pressure was growing. Finally, one evening, a letter arrived at the school. It was handed by a lawyer. The letter said, "Effective immediately. David is approved as a legal ward under the temporary guardianship of Ellis Grant, recognized by the city council and supported by community petition." It had over 10,000 signatures. The principal read it, hands shaking. Mr. Ellis stood beside David in the office and said, "Some people see trash, others see treasure. It's just a matter of time." The next day, David was announced as one of 3 finalists for a National Youth Innovator Award. He would be flown to Washington, D.C. for a final presentation. The prize, a full scholarship to any college in the country, plus funding for his project. Maya screamed when she read the email. David just sat in silence. "They chose me," he whispered. "Yes," Maya said, holding his hand. "Because they finally saw you?" But as always, peace didn't last long. That night, while David slept, someone slashed the tires of the school janitor's car. The next morning, Mr. Ellis was missing from school. Maya found out later he'd been suspended. No reason given. Just pending investigation. David walked into the hallway and saw the memo on the board. "Mr. Ellis will not return until further notice." He felt something snap in his chest. They weren't just trying to stop him now. They were punishing the people helping him. David didn't speak the entire morning. Not during homeroom, not during break. Not even when Maya showed him the latest article in the paper with his name printed in bold letters. He just stared at the front of the school, where a new banner had been hung overnight. Zero tolerance for rule breakers, integrity above all. It wasn't about school pride. It was about control. It was a message, and David knew who it was for. He read the words and clenched his fists. They had taken Mr. Ellis out, the only adult who ever believed in him, and they'd done it quietly. Just like they tried to remove him without confrontation, without justice. Maya followed him out to the courtyard. "We can fight this," she said. "Your video worked once. It can work again." David didn't look at her. "They're not afraid of exposure anymore," he said. "They're afraid of change, and that makes them dangerous." She hesitated. "What are you going to do?" David turned to her. "Finish the machine. Present it in D.C. When?" He paused, then added, "And bring Mr. Ellis back." That afternoon, he worked harder than ever in the boiler room. Wires, tubes, cooling systems. He rebuilt every section from scratch, improving what had once been damaged. Maya helped as much as she could, keeping notes and helping him test. He didn't stop for lunch. He didn't stop for water. He barely blinked. "You're pushing too hard," she said once. "If I stop," he replied, "they win." But the school wasn't finished either. The principal called David to the office the next day. The moment he walked in, two unfamiliar men sat across the table, one in a blazer, the other in uniform. "David," the principal said, smiling coldly, "this is Mr. Warren from Child Services, and Officer Trent from the school safety unit." David looked at them calmly. "What's this about?" Mr. Warren leaned forward. "We received an anonymous report that you've been working in unsafe conditions, stools, electricity, heat sources, all without school authorization." David remained silent. "That makes you a safety risk," the officer added. "We're considering a temporary suspension while we investigate." David looked at the principal. "You're afraid of a water machine." The principal gave a fake chuckle. "I'm not afraid of anything. I just follow the law." David stood. "So do I. That's why I know you need evidence before punishing someone, and I have none against me." The officer shifted. Mr. Warren scribbled something on a pad. "We'll be in touch," he said. David walked out without another word. When Maya heard what happened, she grabbed her camera again. "We're not letting them shut you down in silence." That night, they uploaded another video, this one showing the rebuilt machine in action, filtering dirty water, separating impurities, and filling a clean bottle within minutes. It was simple, elegant, and brilliant. David explained every part, slowly, ending with a line that echoed across social media. "They say I'm not allowed to build hope in a school that gave me none, but I'm still here, still building." The video spread even faster than the first. Scientists shared it. Teachers debated it. Thousands of students across the country posted comments like, "We need this in our school," and "Why are they trying to silence him instead of funding him?" Public pressure grew again, but the school board stayed quiet. Silent resistance was their game, until someone unexpected broke it. The mayor. One morning, just before science class, a long black car pulled into the school lot. Security rushed to the entrance. Teachers whispered. Phones came out. And then he stepped out, the mayor of the city. Clean suit, polished shoes, surrounded by aides. He walked directly to the main office, and moments later, he asked to see David. David was called out of class and walked down the hall slowly. Students stared. Teachers moved aside. When he entered the office, the mayor smiled at him and extended a hand. "Mr. Washington," he said, "your story moved my office. Your courage moved me. I'd like to see your project, if you don't mind." David took him to the boiler room. Maya joined them. The mayor watched as David turned on the machine, explained the filtration process, the pressure system, and the eco-friendly design. When he finished, the mayor clapped once. "This is not a school project. This is a city solution." He turned to his aide. "Get me a meeting with public utilities." Later that day, at a press conference outside City Hall, the mayor publicly praised David's invention. "We need young minds like his to build the future, not silence them, not suspend them." "We support his trip to Washington and will consider adopting his design for public use." Reporters cheered. The story went national again. The mayor's statement changed everything. Everything, except one thing: Mr. Ellis was still gone. David approached the principal the next day. "You've cleared my name, now clear his." The principal shrugged. "He's under investigation." David stared. "For what?" "Letting a student use an empty room? That's not illegal. It's decent." The principal didn't answer. He simply walked away. So David tried something else. He asked Maya to help him gather signatures, students, parents, community leaders. He drafted a petition titled, "Bring Back the Man Who Believed in Me." Within 48 hours, it had 18,000 signatures. The local paper covered it. An education podcast featured it. Still, the school said nothing. And then, one morning, Maya came running to David's locker. Her hands shook, her face pale. "Come with me, now." He followed her across the hall, through the side corridor, and into the gym, where the janitor's closet had been ransacked. Tools scattered, a ripped-up uniform on the floor, spray paint across the wall that read, "Stay down." David felt his heart pound. They're threatening him now. Maya picked up a tool. This isn't just about your machine anymore. Someone is scared of what happens if you succeed. David didn't go to class that day. He sat in the boiler room for hours, thinking. The invention was done. The flight to Washington was booked. The mayor was on his side, and yet he felt more helpless than ever. Why does winning feel like losing? He asked aloud. Maya sat beside him. Because they made it a war, not a science fair. That night, David got a message on his old phone. It was from Mr. Ellis. Just a few words. Proud of you. Keep building. I'm okay. David held the phone tight. He didn't know where Mr. Ellis was, but he knew he wasn't giving up. So neither would he. The next morning, the school received another letter, this time from Washington. David had been assigned his presentation slot. The judges would be top scientists, CEOs, and national leaders. But attached to the letter was something unexpected, a security notice. Due to multiple online threats received by the participant, special arrangements are being made for safety. David stared at the words. Threats, he whispered. Maya looked confused. Why would anyone threaten a kid over water? The answer came that evening. An unknown number sent David a short video. In it, a hooded figure stood outside a warehouse. No face, no voice. Just a sign held up that read, "Pull out of DC, or we pull everything." The screen went black. David didn't sleep that night, and in the morning, his machine was gone. David stood in the boiler room staring at the empty space where his machine once sat. The wires were cut, the table flipped, the copper tubing was gone. Even the notes pinned to the wall had been ripped off. His hands shook, not from fear, but from the raw weight of disbelief. Maya walked in slowly, her breath short from running. She stopped the moment she saw it. No, she whispered. No, no. She stepped closer, her voice trembling. Who would? David didn't answer. He walked to the corner and picked up a single metal piece left behind a broken switch. His switch? He turned it in his hand like it could reverse time. But it couldn't. His work was gone. Months of pain, months of fighting, gone in a single night. They filed a report. The school claimed they were deeply concerned. Security cameras had been mysteriously disabled. No one had seen anything. No one had heard anything. No fingerprints, no witnesses. We'll investigate, the principal said, voice hollow. David just looked at him. You already know who did this. The principal blinked. Let the police do their job. David turned and walked away. Back in the hallway, students stared at him with quiet sympathy. Some avoided his eyes, others offered sad nods. It wasn't pity, it was something deeper. They had watched him rise and, now they were watching him be erased. You can still go to Washington, Maya whispered later, sitting beside him outside on the school steps. You can explain what happened. Maybe just take your design plans. David shook his head. They won't believe in ideas. On paper, they believe in proof, and I had it. Later that day, David sat alone in the library. He pulled out his notebook, flipped to the original sketches, and stared at every line. He thought about giving up, not because he was weak, but because it suddenly felt like the world was too heavy for one person to carry. But then, as he sat there with the weight of loss crushing his chest, a memory returned. Mr. Ellis's voice, calm, steady. What matters most isn't that they try to stop you. What matters is that you keep walking anyway. David stood up. The next day, he started again. This time not in the boiler room, not even at school. He borrowed a neighbor's garage. Maya brought the small tools from her dad's old toolbox. Another student, Raphael, who'd once called David trash, showed up silently with a bag of wires and a new filter. My brother's an engineer, he muttered. He told me what you were doing. He said it was genius. I'm sorry for what I said. David looked at him. You coming to help? Raphael nodded. Word spread fast that David wasn't giving up, and soon, more students joined. Not many, just 5 or 6, but they brought pieces, old parts, batteries, leftover tubing. A girl named Aria brought food every night. I don't know science, she said, but I can make sure you don't collapse. By the 3rd night, a new frame stood. By the 5th night, it produced its first drop of clean water, but it wasn't enough. The new system was smaller, less efficient. There was no time to refine it. They had 3 days left before the flight to DC. We're not going to make it, Maya said, tired. Not at this speed. David looked up. Then we don't sleep. And they didn't. They worked through the night, ate sandwiches on the floor, laughed through frustration, fought over designs, rewrote code, rewired pipes. When a part sparked, David didn't flinch. He just fixed it. On the 7th day, as the sun rose, they watched the new prototype fill a bottle with water. It worked. It was smaller, rougher, but it worked. And then came the knock. A soft tap on the garage door. Raphael opened it. Mr. Ellis stood there. He looked thinner, a small scar across his cheek, but his eyes were the same bright and kind. No one spoke for a moment. Then David dropped his wrench and ran forward, hugging him tightly. You're back, he whispered. Mr. Ellis smiled. I never left, just watched from a distance. You've done more than I ever imagined. Maya stepped forward, eyes wide. Did you see the petition? Mr. Ellis nodded. They didn't reinstate me, but they couldn't stop me from supporting my students. That day, David submitted the video of the new prototype to the DC committee. He explained what had happened, showed the damage, then showed the rebuild. You can break a machine, he said, but you can't break purpose. They accepted the entry. The school said nothing. David's flight was scheduled for Friday. That night, his mother, who had been working 2 jobs and barely able to attend school meetings, came home early. She sat beside him. I know I haven't said it enough, she whispered, but I'm proud of you. I was just trying to survive. And you're building a way to make the world better. David didn't cry, but he hugged her tighter than ever. On the day of the flight, the school finally made a move. The principal called an emergency assembly. All students were summoned. The gym filled fast. Teachers stood near the walls. A giant projector screen hung at the front. The principal stood at the podium. Before we send off one of our own to represent us nationally, he said slowly, we want to show support. A video played was a slideshow. Photos of David building, clips from the media, comments from students. It was polished, corporate, empty. Then, the principal gestured to the stage. Come up, David, say a few words. He walked slowly to the front, took the mic, stared at the crowd, and then he said quietly, I didn't build this to represent a school that tried to silence me. I built this for the ones who don't get heard, for the janitors, for the quiet students, for the kids who eat alone, for the teachers who stand up and lose their jobs. You want me to smile for your camera, but I'm not here for photos. I'm here for change. Silence, then applause, small at first, then growing. The principal didn't smile, but he didn't stop it either. After the assembly, David left quietly, but as he walked to the school gate, someone bumped into him hard. Not a student, a man in a dark HOODIE. David turned, startled. The man whispered, should have stayed in your lane, then walked away. David looked around. No cameras, no teachers, just a slip of paper in his hand. He opened it. One sentence. The stage in DC has stairs. Careful, you don't fall. David stood frozen on the sidewalk, staring at the small piece of paper in his hand. The handwriting was rushed, almost scratched in ink, but the message was clear. The stage in DC has stairs. Careful, you don't fall. His breath caught in his throat. He turned to follow the man who had handed it to him, but he had vanished into the crowd. Maya came running behind him, a backpack over her shoulder. David, you forgot your charger, hey, what's wrong? He showed her the note. Her face fell. Is this a threat? David didn't answer. He looked around the street. Every person, every corner, suddenly felt unsafe. Let's just get to the airport, he muttered. I don't want to be late. Maya nodded, though her eyes didn't leave the shadows. The airport was busy, full of families, tired business travelers, and noisy kids. But David kept looking over his shoulder. Twice he thought he saw the same man from earlier by the newsstand, once more near the water fountain, but when he moved closer, the man was gone. You're not paranoid, Maya whispered at security. They don't want you to succeed. David gave a short laugh. They never did. When they reached the gate, Raphael was already there, waving excitedly. I convinced my uncle to fly me out, he said proudly. He's got a truck in Baltimore. I told him this was more important than deliveries. Maya hugged him tight. You're insane. I love it. David smiled for the first time that day, but deep inside, something still felt off. His fingers kept going to the note folded in his pocket. On the plane, he sat near the window, staring at the clouds. He remembered how everyone used to laugh at him, how they mocked the way he dressed, his old shoes, the way he smelled in winter, when the heater at his shelter didn't work. And now he was flying across the country with the same hands they once called garbage hands that had built Hope. In Washington, a black SUV was waiting at the airport holding a sign, with his name, David Lane. The man in the suit asked, I'm from the Youth Innovation Board. I'll be escorting you to the hotel. David nodded, keeping his backpack close. Maya leaned into him and whispered, this feels like a movie. Raphael grinned. A superhero origin story. The hotel was massive glass walls, chandelier ceilings, carpet thicker than his entire mattress back home. David walked into the room slowly, touched the white curtains, and sat carefully on the edge of the bed like it might break beneath him. It didn't. Maya opened the window. You've got a view of the Capitol, she said. You're sleeping right across from history. David didn't speak. His mind was still on the note. The next morning he awoke to loud knocks on the door. Maya opened it in her hoodie, groggy. A woman in a red blazer stood outside, her badge flashing. Good morning. I'm here to collect Mr. Lane. Final setup and stage walkthrough before tonight's Youth Tech Conference. David grabbed his prototype case and followed her out. Downstairs, dozens of other teens were loading into shuttles, kids from all over the country. But everyone noticed David. His face had gone viral. They whispered his name, stared at the case in his hand like it carried gold. The auditorium was huge. Red curtains, velvet seats, shining lights, a stage taller than David expected. He walked up slowly, knees slightly trembling. The stairs, he stopped halfway, then kept going. On stage, he found his spot. The woman in the red blazer pointed to a red circle marked on the floor. You'll stand here. Lights hit you from above. Speak clearly. No pressure. She smiled. but David only nodded. When rehearsal ended, David stayed behind to test his prototype one more time. He connected the solar battery, adjusted the tubing, flipped the switch. It worked. A soft hum, a flicker of blue light, and water began to filter through. He felt a small surge of pride. But then he heard footsteps. Behind the curtain, slow, deliberate, he turned. Hello. No answer. Just silence. He stepped off the stage and moved toward the back. The storage area was dark. He reached into his pocket for his phone and turned on the flashlight, and that's when he saw it. A second prototype. His prototype, but not his build. It looked like his same design, same filter model, same wiring patterns, but with cleaner parts, better casing, and a sticker on the side that said Lucas Engineering Academy. David's chest tightened. He grabbed the tag taped to the machine, presented by Ethan Graves, lead innovator. He remembered the name. Ethan was one of the rich students at school, the one whose father sat on the school's funding board, the same one who had laughed loudest the day David gave his first pitch. David's hands shook. He took a photo with his phone, then backed away. Back at the hotel, he showed Maya and Raphael. He rebuilt it, David whispered. He rebuilt my design and entered it under his name. Raphael cursed. That's theft? Straight up theft? Maya grabbed his phone. We'll go public. We'll post it. They can't silence you again. But David didn't move. If we make a scene, they'll kick us out. I'll be labeled unstable or uncooperative, and I'll never get another shot. Maya clenched her fists. Then what do we do? David stood up slowly. We let him show his machine first. The evening came fast. The crowd was huge: students, press tech CEOs, government leaders. The lights were blinding. Backstage, David stood beside his prototype in silence. Ethan walked by once, smirking. Nice outfit, he said, nodding at David's patched-up shoes. You dress like you build. Cheap. David didn't respond. He just smiled. Ethan's name was called first. He walked on stage, polished and rehearsed. Ladies and gentlemen, he began. Today I bring you a solution that filters water with 96% purity, using sunlight and recycled materials. My team and I. David flinched. Team Ethan had a team. Spent months designing a prototype that could change lives in poor communities. We call it Clean Light. He unveiled it. The fake prototype. The audience clapped. Then the machine was tested. It worked. The judges smiled. David's name was next. He stepped into the light. He heard murmurs. Some people stood to get a better look. He saw Maya and Raphael in the second row. He saw his mother near the back, hands clenched, eyes wide. He looked straight at the judges. My name is David Lane. I come from nowhere. No fancy lab, no team, no funding, just hope and necessity. Because when you have nothing, you learn how to build something from pain. My machine isn't perfect, but it's real. It was built in an old boiler room, by hands that used to scrub floors. He unveiled it. He connected it, but nothing happened. A pause, no hum, no flicker. The machine stayed silent. David's mouth went dry. He tapped the side. Checked the switch. Nothing. The audience whispered. One judge leaned forward. Heart raced. His fingers scrambled across the wires. Then he saw it. A clean cut, a sliced battery wire. Sabotage. David stared at the sliced wire as if it had cut through his own body. For a second, everything went quiet. The murmurs in the audience disappeared. The stage lights dimmed in his eyes. He felt alone again. Just like that first winter at the shelter. Just like the day his dad left. Just like the night he sat in the back of class smelling like a trash bin. And no one would sit next to him. Sabotage. Someone had wanted him to fail. No, not someone. Ethan. It had to be him. He was the only one who stood to gain from David's failure. But David couldn't prove it. Not yet. A judge leaned into the mic. Mr. Lane, is there a malfunction? David swallowed hard. He looked up at the expectant eyes, hundreds of them. CEOs, media, fellow students, teachers, all watching the homeless guy fumble. Maya stood halfway out of her seat, fists balled. Raphael looked like he was ready to rush the stage. But David raised his hand gently, signaling them to stay put. He took a breath. I built this system in the basement of a soup kitchen. I didn't have the best tools. I didn't have proper training. But I had problems and I tried to fix them. The audience listened quietly. And now, yes, something's wrong. The wire's been cut. Gasps. Someone coughed nervously. I don't know who did it, David continued, his voice steady. And I'm not here to point fingers. Because if my machine can be broken this easily, maybe I didn't build it strong enough. But I built it honestly. From scratch. From pain. From truth. A silence fell over the crowd, then a single clap. Then two. And soon, the entire auditorium echoed with applause, not because the machine had worked, but because David had. Because he stood on that stage with nothing but truth and backbone. It wasn't about the prototype anymore. It was about him. After the conference, reporters crowded around Ethan, asking questions. His answers were slippery. I've never even seen his design, he said. Any similarity is purely a coincidence. But then someone showed him the photo David had taken backstage. The one with Ethan's fake prototype clearly labeled and nearly identical to David's. Ethan froze. That must be a fake. Meanwhile, David sat quietly in the hallway with Maya and Raphael. His hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from what he was about to do next. I'm not done, he whispered. Not yet. Maya touched his shoulder. You were amazing up there. You didn't even need the machine. Raphael grinned. You broke them without even turning it on. Later that night, as the event dinner carried on in the ballroom, David met quietly with one of the judges, a woman named Dr. Lindrith, who worked with a nonprofit that built tech for developing countries. She'd been watching David all week. I know what happened to your prototype, she said. I also know the system he showed on stage wasn't entirely his. David looked up. Then why didn't you say anything? Dr. Lin leaned in. Because the world doesn't listen until it's ready. But now, it's ready. She handed him a card. I want to fund your project. We can rebuild it, stronger, safer. We'll start in Baltimore. I've got connections in Africa, 2 places where people walk miles just for muddy water. You've been there. Maybe not the same geography, but the same struggle. David took the card, stunned. Why me? She smiled. Because real change doesn't come from boardrooms. It comes from boys who've slept on cold floors and still dream in full color. The next morning, the event's media headlines exploded. Homeless teen exposes copycat innovator. At national conference, David Lane's broken prototype unveils a broken system who cut the wire. Suspicion grows around Ethan Graves within hours. David's name began trending on social media. People started digging into his background. Some cruel, others curious. Old videos resurfaced, one from school where a classmate poured water on his backpack as others laughed. Another from a shelter fundraiser where David fixed a heater with scrap parts in under 10 minutes. The world began to see not just a poor boy with a sad story, but an inventor, a builder, a voice. By afternoon, Ethan's school launched an internal investigation. They suspended him temporarily from all academic programs. Ethan's father, furious and embarrassed, tried calling every reporter for a retraction, but the truth had already spread. David, meanwhile, received an email from a producer at a major talk show. We'd like to fly you to New York, it said. Your story's inspiring millions. We want the world to hear you. Maya read the email aloud twice. You're going viral, she whispered. Raphael laughed. Bro, you're gonna need security now. David didn't respond. He was staring at the message, but his mind was somewhere else. He remembered his mother. He hadn't called her since. The speech, she hadn't even known he was speaking. David stepped outside into the cold Washington air and dialed her number. The phone rang once, then twice, then her voice. Hello. He froze. Mom, he said quietly. A pause, then a gasp. David, is that really you? He nodded, even though she couldn't see him. Yeah, it's me. Her voice cracked. I saw you on the news. I saw everything. I thought. She stopped herself. I'm sorry for everything, for not being there, for not believing. David's throat closed. I just wanted you to be proud, he whispered. I am, she said. So proud it hurts. They talked for 10 minutes. 10 minutes that stitched 1,000 wounds. And when the call ended, David looked up at the gray sky and felt something break inside. A weight finally lifted. That night, Maya knocked on his door. We need to talk, she said. David looked at her face. It was serious. Raphael followed behind her, holding his phone. What's going on? David asked. But Maya handed him the device. A new message thread was open. From a blocked number. 3 images. One of David's prototype before the wire was cut. Another of someone backstage wearing event staff uniform, holding a pair of scissors, and the third bank statement. A transfer. To someone named Kyle R. Simmons. David's eyes narrowed. That's one of the interns, Maya said. Worked backstage. The same guy who brought water to Ethan's table. David's heart dropped. Raphael leaned in. Ethan didn't cut the wire himself. He paid someone else to do it. The room went silent. David looked back at the photos. The face of the intern was grainy, but clear enough. They finally had proof. David stared at the image on Raphael's phone, as if the pixels were burning into his brain. The man in the backstage photo wasn't just any intern. He was one of the volunteers assigned to Ethan's table the entire week. A staff badge hung crooked. On his chest, his hand gripped the wire cutters, the exact kind David had seen in the toolbox near the AV station. The same kind missing from his kit after the sabotage. But it was the money transfer that made his blood go cold. $2,500, sent just one day before the presentation, labeled consulting fee. The name on the account, Kyle R. Simmons. David didn't remember him at first. But then a face flashed in his memory. Short hair, green hoodie, barely made eye contact. A ghost around the event. Quiet, unnoticed. A perfect accomplice. David sat on the edge of the hotel bed, hands clenched. So Ethan really paid someone to destroy my project, he said, voice low. Maya nodded. The timestamp on the footage matches the exact minute your system crashed. Kyle was backstage alone for 30 seconds. Then he disappeared before the show ended, Raphael added. And guess what? Kyle's Instagram? Gone. Deleted. Vanished overnight. David rose to his feet. His chest burned. Not from anger, but from resolve. We're going public, he said. I'm done being quiet. He tried to ruin everything I built. Now he'll answer for it. Maya glanced at Raphael, then back at David. Are you sure? This could turn ugly? His dad's a corporate lawyer. He has connections. David didn't blink. So do I now. I have the truth, and the world is finally listening. Within hours, the story broke. First on a small tech blog, then a local DC outlet. By evening, major news networks picked it up. Conference sabotage. Teen inventor's machine destroyed by bribed volunteer. The hashtag justice for David started trending worldwide. Thousands of comments poured in, people outraged, stunned, heartbroken. Some shared their own stories of being silenced, underestimated, or cheated. Others demanded Ethan's expulsion. A few sent messages of support to David, calling him the voice of the forgotten. The conference board issued a formal investigation. Ethan was pulled from all panels and asked to return to campus immediately. But he didn't. Rumors swirled that his father had flown him out of the country to avoid press. Meanwhile, David was invited onto a major morning show in New York. He wore the same worn-out shoes he'd walked in when he first arrived at the shelter, but this time with a clean jacket. Maya lent him, and a quiet fire in his eyes. On live TV, the host leaned forward. David, how does it feel to go from homeless to hero in less than a year? He thought for a moment. I'm not a hero, he said softly. I just didn't give up. The audience clapped. And what do you say? Two kids out there who feel invisible right now. David looked straight into the camera. You're not invisible. You're just not in the spotlight yet. But your moment is coming. Just don't stop building. After the interview, David received a call from a top university offering him a full scholarship. Another came from a tech incubator in California, offering seed funding for his clean water project. Dr. Lin emailed him a full proposal for deployment in 3 countries. And then, something unexpected happened. His high school principal called. We want to hold a special assembly in your honor, the message said. To tell your story. To teach our students what resilience looks like. David paused before answering. He hadn't been back to that school since the day he walked out carrying a ripped backpack and a stomach full of shame. He remembered the looks, the laughter, the way teachers ignored the smell because they didn't want to get involved. But maybe it was time. The following week, he stepped onto the same cracked steps of that school, this time through the front. Entrance students gathered in the gym, buzzing with chatter. Most had seen his videos online. Some were confused, others amazed. And then there were the ones who used to mock him. Now sitting in the front row, silent, the principal introduced him as a once-in-a-generation mind with a heart bigger than his invention. David took the mic, scanned the room, and spoke. I used to sleep on benches and dream of whiteboards. I used to sit in this building and count the minutes until I could leave. But what I didn't know back then was that pain could become fuel, that being laughed at could turn into motivation. He paused. I didn't have money, I didn't have comfort. But I had one thing you can't buy: purpose. The gym went still. Then someone stood up. It was Mrs. Ellis, the teacher who once gave David a lunch card when he hadn't eaten for 2 days. Her eyes shone. You always had it in you, she whispered. We just didn't see it. David smiled faintly. Maybe I needed to disappear first. To be noticed. As the assembly ended, David stood in the hallway, looking at the trophy case near the entrance. He touched the glass and saw his own reflection beside plaques and ribbons of students who never knew his name, and yet now his name would be carved beside them just as he turned to leave. His phone buzzed. An email from the office of Ethan Graves' father. Subject: legal action imminent. David's breath caught. The message read, our client, Ethan Graves, denies all allegations made in public forums. You have 48 hours to retract your statements or face a defamation lawsuit. David handed the phone to Maya, who had just stepped outside with him. Her eyebrows shot up. He's threatening you. After everything? Raphael, reading over her shoulder, laughed bitterly. Classic. Rich kid messes up and sues the person he hurt. David remained calm. I'm not afraid of him, he said, but I'm not walking into this without help. He forwarded the email to Dr. Lin and a journalist who had been covering the story fairly. Then he called the producer from the morning show. I want to go live, he said. One more time. 2 days later, David stood on set again, this time facing tougher questions. A legal analyst joined the panel. David, you've been accused of defamation. Are you prepared for a legal battle? He nodded. I don't want to fight, but I won't lie to protect someone who tried to destroy my work, the analyst added. There's video footage, bank records, eyewitnesses. That's more than enough to defend yourself. David turned to the camera. This isn't just about me. It's about every kid who's ever been silenced. Every teen who builds something in a garage or shelter and gets it stolen. If I back down, I tell them they're powerless. Back at the hotel, a flood of support poured in. Activists, inventors, lawyers. One nonprofit law firm offered to represent him pro bono. Then came another twist, an anonymous leak, an internal memo from Ethan's school showing administrators knew about the sabotage days before the story broke, but stayed quiet to protect their reputation. It was scandalous, explosive, and it meant the school was complicit. David's team now, including a volunteer legal advisor, decided to file a counterclaim, not for money, but for public acknowledgement of the sabotage and an official apology from the institution.nm. The biggest surprise came, a video message from Kyle the intern, who cut the wire. He looked scared, tired, sitting in a dark room. "I want to tell the truth," he said. "Ethan paid me. I didn't know how serious it was. I thought it was just a prank. But when I saw what it did to David, I couldn't live with it." He paused. "I'm sorry, and I'll testify if needed." The video ended, and David sat back, in silence. The storm had finally broken, but the real trial was just beginning. The courtroom smelled like polished wood and old tension. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but the buzz outside was deafening. Protesters, reporters, and students from across the country had gathered. Some held signs that read "Stand with DAVID." Others chanted for academic justice. It was more than a lawsuit now. It was a battle for truth, for every dreamer who had ever been ignored or crushed. David sat silently beside his lawyer, a calm yet fierce woman named Amelia Wu, had taken his case for free. On the opposite side, Ethan Graves sat smugly in a gray suit, flanked by two high-paid attorneys and his stone-faced father. The judge entered, and the room fell still. The case had grown beyond defamation. After Kyle's video confession, the court had merged both claims: Ethan's lawsuit and David's counterclaim for sabotage, character damage, and academic misconduct. The judge, an older woman with piercing eyes, opened the trial by saying, "This case isn't just about two young men. It's about accountability, in a world where privilege often shields the truth." The first to testify was Kyle. He walked in with shaking hands, sat down, and looked straight ahead. "I cut the wire," he said. "Ethan told me it was harmless. Said David's machine would crash anyway. I didn't think it mattered. I was just an intern looking for a recommendation." Ethan's lawyer objected, saying the testimony was coerced, but the judge overruled. Kyle continued, "I saw what happened afterward. I saw David fall to the ground, and I saw Ethan laughing behind the curtain. That's when I knew I'd been used." David didn't look at Ethan during the testimony. He just kept his gaze on the table, hands clenched. When it was his turn to speak, the courtroom leaned forward. David stood slowly, walked to the witness box, and took a breath. "I wasn't born with much," he began. "There were nights I didn't eat. Days I wore the same socks for weeks. But I loved building things. It was my escape. My machine wasn't just metal and wires, it was my hope. My belief that I could change something, even if I didn't have a bed to sleep in." He paused. "When it was destroyed, failed, but then I realized I hadn't, because even broken, people saw it. They saw me." He looked toward Ethan now. "You didn't just damage my invention, you tried to erase me, but I'm still here." The courtroom was quiet. Even the judge looked moved. Ethan's lawyer tried to redirect, asking David about his sudden fame and whether he exaggerated events for attention. David calmly replied, "If I wanted attention, I wouldn't have spent months working in a garage with leaking pipes. I didn't go viral, the truth did." Then came the final twist. Amelia called a surprise witness. A former student from University Lab, someone who had worked under Ethan's supervision the previous summer. Her name was Talia. She walked to the stand with a thin laptop in her arms. "This is a recording of Ethan talking about David," she said. "I wasn't supposed to record it, but he was bragging in the lab, saying David was just a publicity stunt, that if he disappeared, no one would care." She hit play. Ethan's voice echoed through the courtroom speakers. "He's not a threat, he's a sob story. Once his project crashes, they'll forget his name." Gasps spread through the room. Ethan's face turned red. His lawyers scrambled. His father looked like a statue cracking from the inside. The judge called a recess. Outside, the media exploded. Ethan Graves caught on tape. News tickers scrolled his words on repeat. Students across the country called for his expulsion. Sponsors pulled support. The foundation that gave him his startup grant issued a statement withdrawing funding. He was being harassed not by David but by his own truth. Back inside, Ethan made one last desperate move. His lawyers offered a settlement. They would drop the lawsuit against David and pay damages if David agreed not to release any more footage and issue a mutual statement clearing Ethan's name publicly. Amelia turned to David. "This is your call," she said. David looked at the paper. His hand hovered. Then he slowly shook his head. "I didn't come this far to lie," he said, "even if it's wrapped in money." The judge returned and, after a short deliberation, ruled in David's favor. The evidence proves sabotage. The claims of defamation are baseless. The court awards David Cole damages and demands an official apology from the Graves family and Ethan's academic institution. As the gavel hit the wood, the courtroom erupted not in chaos, but in applause. Maya hugged David so tight he nearly fell. Raphael jumped, yelling, "He did it! He actually did it!" But David wasn't smiling. He was just still, like a storm had passed but left his bones hollow. That night, back at the hotel, David sat on the rooftop staring at the lights of the city. Maya joined him with 2 mugs of cocoa. "You okay?" she asked. David nodded slowly. "I should be happy, right?" She stayed quiet. "I just keep thinking about how close I was to quitting. One more day, and I would have packed up and left." If you hadn't believed in me, you believed in yourself. She interrupted. I just reminded you. They sat quietly, the cool breeze brushing their faces. Then Maya said, What? Now? David looked out at the skyline. I build again, he said. This time, bigger. The next day, he received a call from a group of young inventors in Detroit who had seen his story. They wanted to collaborate. Schools started inviting him to speak. A professor in Japan reached out with interest in joint research, and Dr. Lin sent an invitation to join an international tech conference in Singapore to showcase his new design. Fully funded. David stood at the edge of something new, but before he left the country, he had one stop to make: the shelter where he once lived. He walked in with a duffel bag not full of clothes, but laptops, tools, kits. He donated everything he had used to build his machine, and then he set up a new lab in the basement. For the next generation, for the kids who were laughed at. One of them, a boy with no shoes and too much pride to ask for help, whispered, You were like us. David smiled. I still am. As he walked out of the shelter, Raphael came running with news. The school board wants to name the robotics lab after you, he shouted. David froze, then laughed quietly. Let them, he said, but make sure they leave the door open, for all the kids who aren't honors or gifted, but just hungry to create. And just as he reached the street, a black SUV pulled up. A man stepped out. It was a representative from a World Tech Organization. He handed David a letter. You've been nominated for the Global Youth Innovator Award. David blinked, speechless, but he could barely read the letter before his phone buzzed again. This time, a message from Ethan. Just 3 words. You win. Congratulations. David didn't reply. He didn't need to, because some battles don't end in revenge, they end in growth. And as the wind moved through his hair and the world opened before him, David finally realized he was never just a homeless kid, he was a builder, and now, the world was his blueprint. David had never left the country before. Now he stood inside the airport holding a passport he never thought he'd own, a ticket to Singapore in his hand, and a duffel bag on his shoulder. All around him were people in suits, families traveling for vacations, and international students chattering in different languages. He felt like a child again, small, a little lost. But then he looked up at the screen, flashing his name next to the Global Youth Innovator Conference, and the old fear began to fade. Maya had walked with him all the way to the security gate. Don't forget to sleep, she said, adjusting his collar. And don't freeze when the camera's on you this time. He gave a small smile. I'll try not to faint on stage. They laughed, but then she grew serious. David, I'm proud of you. No matter what happens next, don't let them shrink you. You belong in every room. They said you didn't? David nodded, but something lingered in Maya's eyes. He wanted to ask her what it was. He didn't, not yet. The flight felt like a blur. 20 hours of silence, movies he didn't watch, and thoughts that wouldn't rest. When he landed, Singapore hit him like a wall of heat and light. Clean roads, towering buildings, signs in multiple languages, and a tech center so futuristic it looked like a spaceship. A driver held a sign with his name, and before he could even process the new world, he was being driven to the Marina Bay Conference Hall. It was real. More real than the beat-up ceiling in his old shelter room. More real than the half-built robot he'd once hidden in a trash bag so no one would steal it. At the hotel, he met other young inventors. A girl from Nigeria who made a water-purifying bike. A boy from Brazil who created a solar stove from scrap metal. A team from South Korea who'd developed drones to deliver medicine in war zones. They welcomed him like he was one of them. And for the first time, David didn't feel like an outsider. He felt like a peer. The next morning, the conference began. People in formal suits filled the giant auditorium. World leaders, investors, scientists. David was told his presentation was on day 2. He spent the night rehearsing every sentence, but no amount of preparation could prepare him for what came next. On day 1, as he sat quietly in the audience, a surprise guest speaker was announced. We now welcome an unexpected but brave addition to our global dialogue, the host said. Please welcome Ethan Graves. David froze. The room clapped politely. Ethan walked onto the stage with a carefully practiced smile. Dressed in a black suit, hair perfectly combed, he looked more like a PR version of himself than the real boy David had known. I made mistakes, Ethan began. But I've come here not to talk about my fall. I'm here to talk about rising. About what the next generation can do when we lift each other instead of push each other down. The audience clapped again. David's jaw clenched. Ethan had rebranded himself as the villain who changed. Backstage, one of the organizers pulled David aside. We didn't know he'd show, the woman whispered. He wasn't in the official list. He came with backing from a U.S. delegation. You're still the keynote. David nodded, but something didn't sit right. Later that night, he found a note slipped under his door. You win. But we both know who they'll fund next. Be ready, E. David crumpled the note. Rage filled him again, but this time it didn't control him. He took a walk through the city, breathing in the humid air, watching the boats on the water, listening to the laughter of strangers who didn't know his name. Then he sat under a tree, took out his sketch pad, and began to draw. Not a machine, not a weapon, but a school. A lab made from shipping containers, solar-powered, portable, a place where kids like him could learn dash anywhere. The next morning was his turn, as he stood behind the stage curtain. His palms sweating, his heart thudding, he heard the host's voice echo through the auditorium. Next, we welcome a young man who went from homeless shelters to the heart of innovation. His story has crossed borders. His work has inspired movements. Please welcome David Cole. He stepped into the light. The room was packed, flashbulbs, cameras' eyes. He cleared his throat. I'm not here to give a speech, he began. I'm here to make a promise. He held up the new blueprint. I used to build machines because I wanted to escape the world. Now I build them to change it. This is a mobile education lab. It runs on sun, wheels, and belief. And with your help it can exist in every slum, every refugee camp, every forgotten corner of the planet. Silence, then clapping, then a standing ovation. The moment should have ended there, but it didn't, because when he stepped off stage, someone was waiting. A woman, tired eyes, weathered coat, a crumpled photo in her hand. David, to whisper. He stared at her. His breath caught. He had seen that face once in a memory, barely alive. It was his mother. She stepped forward. I saw you on the news. I wasn't sure it was real. I didn't know where to find you. He couldn't move. His knees went weak. I lost you, she said, tears falling. I was sick. I was running. I thought you'd be safer without me. But I never stopped looking. He dropped his bag, ran to her. Held her like the world was cracking. Time didn't rewind, but healing had begun. Later, in the quiet of the hotel room, they sat across from each other. She told him about the years she spent in hiding, running from an abusive man who had once been David's stepfather, about shelters, about broken phones, about a picture she kept of him folded in her shoe. He listened, not with anger, but with eyes that had seen pain and learned how to forgive. When he flew back to the US, she flew with him. No media knew, no press release, just a boy with his mother in seat 14A and 14B, whispering stories and passing peanuts like nothing had ever been broken. Back home, he returned to the lab at the shelter now renamed the David Cole Learning Hub. He began building the prototype for the mobile school. Maya, now working with a non-profit tech incubator, helped him apply for grants. Raphael started managing his social media, which now had over 2 million followers. But just when things felt common, another envelope arrived. This one from a government agency. An invitation to compete for a federal education contract. Top inventors, high stakes, huge funding, and the list of applicants included one name that made his blood run cold. Ethan Graves. Again, he looked up from the letter, eyes narrowing. The war wasn't over. Not yet, but this time David wasn't alone. And this time, he had something bigger than revenge. He had a dream too loud to silence, and a team that believed in him. The contract presentation was just 2 weeks away. The government's education reform initiative, named Future Classrooms for All, would fund one winning design, a new type of mobile low-cost learning system for underserved areas. It wasn't just a competition, it was a turning point. Whoever won this would change the lives of millions. David knew this. So did Ethan Graves. And this time, Ethan wasn't hiding behind apologies or fake humility. He had partnered with a billion-dollar private company. His team had access to the best engineers, designers, and lobbyists. He had the press in his pocket and his story cleaned up for public sympathy. But David wasn't afraid. Not anymore. His model worked. His prototype had already been tested in 3 neighborhoods. Kids who had dropped out of school were coming back. A mother in Detroit said her son hadn't picked up a book in 2 years, until David's mobile classroom parked near their building. One day changed him. David clung to stories like that when the pressure grew too much. In the final days, before the event, David's team worked around the clock. Maya coordinated logistics, cutting through red tape with a fury no one dared challenge. Raphael arranged press interviews and carefully managed David's public presence, now under constant media attention. Even David's mother helped, organizing supplies and offering food when no one remembered to eat. The small shelter lab that once housed broken parts and damp papers now buzzed with energy. Screens lighting the room, models rotating in 3D, and hopeful laughter echoing through the walls. But beneath all of it was the storm building quietly. David received an anonymous warning. Ethan's team was digging into his past again. They wanted dirt, not for truth, but for spin. Anything to shake the public's faith. David didn't hide at a press conference. When asked about his time in the shelter, he looked straight into the cameras and said, "That shelter is where I found my purpose. If you think that makes me less qualified to build for the poor, maybe the problem isn't with me but with how you see the poor." That clip went viral in less than an hour. Finally, the day arrived. The presentation took place in a grand hall in Washington. D.C. judges included educators, government officials, and global tech investors. The world was watching. Ethan went first. His design was sleek. Modular glass classrooms that could fold and unfold in urban spaces. Impressive. Polished. He smiled through every slide. Using fancy words and buzz phrases, he painted a future of robotic teaching assistants and AI-based lesson customization. The crowd clapped. Investors nodded. The judges scribbled notes. Then came David. He walked in, holding a real part of his prototype. Not slides, not projections. Real weather-beaten metal. He placed it on the table. "This is a solar-powered classroom built from recycled bus frames," he said. "It costs 1/5 of Ethan's model. It's already been used by students in Baltimore, Chicago, and New Orleans. I didn't build this for tomorrow's wealthy schools. I built it for today's forgotten kids." He pressed a button. Model unfolded. Seats, a whiteboard, charging stations, rainproof panels. It wasn't beautiful, but it was real. "Sometimes, you don't need robots," he added. "You just need a dry place, light, internet, and someone who believes you." Matter. Silence. Then a soft clapping, then louder. A judge wiped her eyes. One leaned forward and whispered something to another. David stood still, not smiling, not selling, just standing. When the judges retired to deliberate, David stepped outside. The air was cold. His hands trembled. Maya joined him, standing beside him without saying a word. 10 minutes past 20. Then one of the officials stepped out. "They've reached a decision. Come inside." Back in the room, the head judge stood. "Both projects represent different visions of the future, but only one has already proven its impact." A pause. "We award the contract to David Cole." Cheers erupted. Maya grabbed him. Raphael whooped. His mother cried silently from the back row. Cameras flashed. A few people even chanted his name, but David stood in place. He looked across the room at Ethan. Ethan didn't look surprised. He just stared back, lips pressed in a thin smile, and then he clapped once, twice, then walked out, slowly. It wasn't over. David knew that Ethan wasn't the kind to disappear, but this win wasn't about Ethan anymore. This was bigger. The government signed the funding deal the next day. David's program was officially renamed Leap Learning Everywhere Access Program. Within 6 months, mobile classrooms began rolling out across the country. Each one had a small plaque, designed by someone once told he didn't belong. News stories exploded. Documentaries followed. He was interviewed by Oprah, invited to speak at the UN, named one of Time's most influential young people. But through it all, he didn't move to a mansion. He stayed in his city, worked at the shelter, gave jobs to the homeless, offered classes to kids who never fit in. And Maya, she was always there. They never labeled their bond. It wasn't about that. But the way she looked at him during quiet moments said more than any confession. One night as they closed up the lab, she asked, "Do you feel like you've made it?" David thought for a long moment, then said, "I think I finally feel like I'm not running anymore." But the world didn't stop. One morning, Raphael burst into the room. "You need to see this." A live news feed showed a massive protest outside a government building. Ethan Graves stood in front of a mic, flanked by lobbyists. He was challenging the LEAP contract, claiming it was awarded with bias and neglected corporate innovation. It had begun again, but this time, David didn't flinch. He called a press conference the same night. "I have nothing to hide," he said on air. "If you think education belongs in the hands of those with the loudest voices and deepest pockets, I invite you to visit our classrooms, talk to the students, talk to their mothers. Then ask yourself, are you trying to build a future for kids, or just for your brand?" The crowd roared. Ethan never showed up again after that. Years passed. LEAP expanded internationally in Kenya. Children learned under the sun from David's model. In Syria, mobile classrooms appeared in camps. In Brazil, slum kids learned coding with donated tablets powered by his system, and David, he walked into rooms once locked to people like him, taught in schools that once mocked him, built for kids who reminded him of himself. But he never forgot where it started, that day in class. The laughter, the whispers, the questions. He returned once to that school. Stood in the same classroom. The teacher was gone. The building repainted, but the desk was still there. He sat in it, wrote a note, folded it, left it in the drawer. It read, "To the next kid, they laugh at, don't listen, build anyway." And then he left. For the last time, because his story wasn't in that room anymore. It was moving on wheels across cities and deserts, changing lives, one broken classroom at a time.